Hi, this is Heidi Rataj, your host for User Friendly. Today is the last day of our 3-episode special from CES. Guest host Hanish Patel will be discussing the state of cognitive technology, one of the hottest trends at CES 2018. Enjoy the interview and stay tuned in at the end of the episode to hear more about User Friendly Season 2, coming this February.
Hi, I'm Hanish Patel and welcome to User Friendly, recording from CES. It's day 3 of the show and I'm back at the Deloitte lounge space with some new guests. Today we have Mick Locker and Jeff Laux from Deloitte and Chad Steelberg, founder and CEO of Veritone. Mick, Jeff and Chad, welcome to the show.
Great to be here.
Thank you.
Today I want to talk to the three of you about another hot topic at CES 2018. Cognitive technology and artificial intelligence. But not just a basic discussion about tech. We're going to specifically discuss how CogTech is infiltrating the enterprise.
So, Hanish, we're seeing companies use these technologies in a few different ways. First, we're seeing companies use cognitive automation technologies to change how they complete processes, to transform work, so to augment human labor. Second, we're seeing companies use cognitive technologies to change how they make decisions, getting better insights by being able to use bigger data sets, different algorithms. And third, we're seeing companies use what we call cognitive engagement technologies to change how they interact with customers or even interact with their own employees using intelligent avatars. So think about like in an HR shared services or an HR help desk, or for customer applications in a contact center, using those intelligent agents to do that communication. But those are all internal applications, and I think it's important to also recognize that a lot of these companies are looking to use cognitive technologies in their products. And walking around the show floor here at CES, you can see tons of examples.
Jeff, I know we recently released Deloitte's Cognitive Technology Survey. What did the respondents come back with?
When we take a look at the data from our survey, which was really a dispatch from the edge, it was 250 companies that are already really using cognitive technologies and learning how they work and getting better at them. So what we were able to find is that, again, overall, there's a lot of bullishness because there's been a lot of early success. Overall, 30% of our respondents said that they were getting substantial benefits. And within technology, media, and telecommunications companies, who are really at the forefront of a lot of this, 40% are getting substantial economic benefits. So often with a new technology, you'll see some frustration at the beginning, but here you're seeing a lot of success, and it's built upon a couple of pillars. First, they're really getting involved in it. They're getting their hands dirty, launching pilots and launching full-scale implementations. And as they do that, they're understanding how they need to do that translation exercise between what the business needs are and what the data science can provide. That's a really critical point.
And Jeff, maybe just to stand on your shoulders there, in the actual implementation as a business purveyor and provider of cognitive services, 75% of the companies that actually deploy a POC with Veritone invariably find a positive ROI out of that experience and move to full contract. The most successful companies we're finding typically move from a POC to a regional-based deployment to then national and group-wide distribution of that cognitive services within 12 months.
Right. So let's actually go there. Let's talk about the economics and the lexicon of AI and CogTech. You put AI before anything, it just sounds magic, right? Tell me a little bit more, but what does it really mean in terms of reality and the implementation of something like that across an organization?
Absolutely. So unfortunately, I believe I've been around, unfortunately, long enough to remember the dot-com days in my first business. And in the late 90s, I think you had something similar to what you're seeing today, where you stuck a dot-com at the back of every company and you watched its multiple improve. So you see all these dot-com companies, now .ai companies emerging. But true AI companies that exist are a handful that are in the market today. The solution set that most companies are bringing, the titans, are really about data science. How do I enable the bleeding edge companies that are employing data scientists to be able to engage and take their internal data resources to build cognitive models that then can enhance their products and services? Agreed?
Agreed.
Yes, and that's why I think we're finding early success among those companies that are trying to hire some data scientists, get their business people trained up, and really kind of get into the nitty-gritty of it. But that may not be how this reaches mass adoption.
Correct. And that's what we see in the marketplace. We chose a different path. Companies like Salesforce that are able to have a very low barrier to entry of any size company. You can sign up for a single user license and start receiving unbelievable benefits from Salesforce. Today, what our primary mission is how do I lower that barrier of entry without reducing the power that's delivered through cognitive services?
Right.
So with Veritone, we're actually in the marketplace today turning on customers in number of minutes and starting to receive not the 10x benefit that you can really get out of cognitive services, but really that 10 to 20% benefit that then allows organizations to grow and scale, but measuring that ROI in a very methodical, programmatic way.
I think that's really important because a lot of companies can go into these projects with very unrealistic expectations. But if you go in with the start small, get some return, and then grow big, you can really achieve a great deal of success. But you have to have realistic expectations.
Completely agree. And and unfortunately, I think there's a lot of cases that we've seen, where companies spent tens of millions of dollars trying to hit that 10x ball with consultants and hiring data scientists and have failed because either their expectations were mismatched or they didn't have the muscle memory of how they leverage cognitive services and those training algorithms to actually achieve that goal. Maybe like you and I going into the professional Major League Baseballs and swinging for the fence. I'd be bunting. Just try to hit the ball.
And then your organization is both demoralized and behind because they've got other savvy organizations who are hitting singles, getting on base, because they're using cognitive to automate business processes that are better to have a computer do than a human being do, or are bringing to bear human judgment with better sources of data to make better decisions. They're interacting with their customers in better and different ways. These are all very tangible business benefits that don't require, $10 million implementations necessarily. And the other thing that I think companies are doing well, the ones that are getting returns, is that they're focusing much more on innovation, even with these lower scale projects, than simply cost cutting. So they're using it to enhance their products and services. They're looking for cognitive to help them create smarter new services. But they're not neglecting all the process change that you need in order to do those first two things.
So let's actually go there. You mentioned about expectations. You mentioned about maybe going for the single versus the home run, and about really looking at, Jeff, you mentioned around internal processes. When we think about cognitive, when we think about AI, how important is it right now and will be when companies are forming their business strategy going forward?
I think it's absolutely critical. If you're not, your competition is thinking about it. So if you're not, you're just going to get pushed out of the market by your competition, right? Companies are looking at using these technologies to improve their operations, get to market more quickly than you. Companies are looking to use these technologies to improve their products and differentiate them in the market. So I'm in walking around the show floor, and some of this stuff may not, come to full fruition, but you can see intelligence being incorporated into bathroom fixtures, right? Like, who thought that you would come to CES and see like a mattress section? There's a mattress section on the show floor, right? Or a bathroom fixture section, which is here.
Well, I think another example of the consumer electronics aspects of starting small and growing big is a company that started kind of building intelligence into their doorbells and cameras, right? And it started off with the basics, right? It wasn't trying to identify my face and alert the police with an automated 911 call. It was basically telling me if there was motion or a loud noise. Now, pretty quickly, we all turned off the alert because I didn't want to see my cat, my dog, and my wife walk by anymore, right? But the next step in the evolution, right? But they still sell tens of millions of those cameras. And the next evolution is actually trainable cameras. So that it learns that these are the people that you see frequently in my house, anomaly engines, that is moving on the continuum of cognition, where historically cognition was something that was only relegated to the human mind. It moved to the cloud where you had the processing power. It's moved to the edge. And now you're seeing it get embedded directly into the IoT devices themselves. But that cognitive kind of continuum is going to continue to evolve as end consumer products get embedded, but the real hard intelligence is still going to sit in the cloud.
Got it. And actually, I wanted to ask exactly on that space, everything that we're seeing in CES, what you mentioned, Mick, about the mattresses and exactly where you're going about what we saw in the devices and the cloud. Is that where the big investments are going to come for the enterprise? Is it going to be in the cloud, or are they going to be initially from the devices? Because the devices are a lot more tangible for you and I, right? We understand, we believe, we can see, we can touch and feel the devices. So where's the big investment going to be?
So I'm pursuing enterprise customers. So obviously we're not in the consumer electronic space. However, what's interesting, what we've found is all of our customers initially started with cloud-only implementations.
Okay.
Within 2 years of bringing services to hundreds of accounts, we started reaching into certain organizations which wanted to keep their information private.
Right.
And the challenge is to train a model and to actually, even if you're not training a model, but to use a model against your existing data, you've got to bring the model and the data together. And so historically, the process has been for us to move all your information to the cloud. Instead, what we've done is actually build a hybrid system. So what we're able to do now is route the engines behind the firewall programmatically so the data and the content never leaves. So suddenly what's happening is companies are starting to benefit because cognition is happening across a heterogeneous environment at the IoT level, in the cloud, and behind their firewall, but in a unified way. So it's no longer silos of intelligence, but really thinking about it as a mesh network of intelligence.
So what you mentioned there, Chad, would I be correct in assuming that companies are going to more and more work together to come to a common platform, or are they still going to have proprietary, going to try and compete, and how they get ahead in this world? And I know it's a tough one, but I want to lay it out.
My answer. So it depends on who you're talking to. If you're talking about the end customer, I think the end customer's objective is always to win and to beat them. But in terms of the technology ecosystem, I'm seeing the same amount of camaraderie that I saw in the early .com days back in 93 and 94. Even the smaller, tiny companies, we're tracking over 7,000 cognitive services companies around the world, from Russia and Kiev to literally the Middle East. We're now onboarding all of those cognitive engines and able to provide a service that's now about an ecosystem of intelligence that's benefiting our end customers. And it's a partnership.
Yeah, it's much more powerful than what one company can do on their own.
Correct.
Yeah.
And no one's going to own that whole ecosystem. It's just not going to happen. And so if we're going to end up having the interoperability that's required, let's say to use facial recognition for a payment system, right? That's a matter not just of training data, it's a matter of getting people to use end devices as you were stating, and then to use it as a form of biometric identification that unlocks various different types of accounts, right? That is an AI-based ecosystem in payments. That will only happen when you've got certain numbers of players playing together. The same thing's going to be happening with artificial intelligence at the edge of networks and so forth. There has to be some interoperability.
Yeah, and think of how complex it gets when you think of like smart cities, right? No one company can own all the technology to operate a smart city. You have to have lots of different technologies working together.
So with that in mind, Mick, with I would say all of the players contributing to this cognitive and AI world, what have you seen at CES that's really going to move it forward for CogTech and AI in 2018?
Oh, wow. So let me think about that for a second. So one of the biggest surprises for me, and this actually maybe not be a big game changer necessarily, but I'm surprised at the number of humanoid robots on the show floor. I don't know if anyone else noticed that, but there's dozens, right? And a couple of years ago, there maybe would have been 2 or 3. And I think the variety of applications is interesting. So there's the humanoid robot that is sort of an in-home companion or kind of in-home concierge. But then there's also the retail store applications, right? Like putting a humanoid robot in a retail store to interact with customers and help them, figure out a great buying experience. And I don't know if any of you have stayed at one of the hotels that has a delivery of, if you need extra towels, they'll bring you your towel.
Robot does it?
Yeah, robot will bring you your towels. Exactly. So I thought that was interesting, but I haven't had a chance to spend too much time in the smart cities area. I want to do that later today. There's just so much stuff to look at, right? It's hard to get everything in, but I actually think the smart cities is going to be one of the most interesting areas. Right. Think of the changes to law enforcement, to how we get around cities. It could be pretty amazing.
So I attended a number of panels yesterday on CogTech and AI, and I kept on hearing transformation. It's going to transform the way we work. It's going to transform businesses. To the extent it's even going to transform industries. And Mick, you even mentioned the hotel industry and how that's changing. if we think about AI and CogTech in 2018, what industries, one, are going to be impacted the most in terms of benefits, and which ones are going to have the biggest challenges?
In our study, we realized that 1 in 4 TMT companies said that cognitive is transforming their industry right now versus 12% for other industries. And that's not really surprising given the fact that there are a lot of companies producing AI as well as using it internally. And because TMT companies are also much more innovation focused, and they're really using it for products as well as internal process changes. They see that it's very important for their innovation. So they believe that if they were to invest more in cognitive, they'd be able to innovate faster.
Correct. I look at it more from a constraint function. To actually apply cognitive services in an organization, you really have to have two things. One is access to the information and the data to be able to feed it into those cognitive services, first and foremost. And other industries actually have challenges around regulatory hurdles, whether that's in the federal government, local law enforcement, HIPAA compliance, and medical, et cetera. And what we're seeing is we're pushing into the market is exactly the same information. We're in the legal industry, we're in the government space, both at the federal and the local level, and in media and tech. And what we're finding is in the media and tech sector, it's literally every company we're talking to is engaging with us and starting to move into POCs. Where others, the regulatory hurdles are so high that from a company of my size, going through those barriers is almost too difficult for us to tackle.
Right.
But what's interesting is from an international perspective, those barriers don't exist. And so, I'll be traveling to the UAE next month, literally the KSA, the Philippines, all around the world. We have customers and prospects that are starting to engage at the government level in the medical fields because those barriers don't exist. What I'm really concerned about is how the United States as an organization looking forward as has cognition, if we truly believe it's going to transform the landscape, not just from an enterprise standpoint, but from a government standpoint. How can we compete if we put these regulatory hurdles at such a steep level and that the rest of the time we're able to export our technology, generate revenue, and create value for those companies, which in the end are competing with our domestic corporations.
So let's talk about those companies for a second. And if we think about AI, think about cognitive, the biggest fear is, where's my job going to go? We've already heard about delivery to the hotel room. Probably next year you're going to be talking to a robot and not me, right? So I probably fear it. But if I think about the Deloitte survey that was held, we hear that 69% say there's minimal job loss. In fact, there's probably going to be job gain, right? So thinking about those aspects, how does that transform the organization, how they think about their work, how they think about their workforce as well?
So I think we're at the stage now where we're early, and so companies haven't seen that much change. I think there will be some job loss or pretty significant shifts in the jobs that need to be done, right? And I think we were talking about this yesterday, where you guys haven't seen your clients lose a lot of jobs.
The exact opposite.
Yeah, the exact
We're actually
opposite.
seeing the companies that are deploying the cognitive services are hiring more because they're essentially having better positive ROIs versus their competition.
Yeah.
You're seeing job loss happening by the companies that aren't adopting the technology.
Yeah. So they're hiring maybe for different jobs though, but I think it'll be interesting to see how things look in 20 to 25 years, right? I think we're okay in the next 5 to 10 years. 20 to 25 years, I think things could look significantly different. Maybe that's a conversation for the bar later on.
Absolutely. Well, let's have a quick one before the bar. Let's put it that way, right?
All right.
You mentioned 20 years. What's the trajectory of these technologies, even in the next 3 to 5 years, to bring it a bit more medium term? What is it? How will they be different from what's available today?
I think this is the part that's kind of unknowable. And when we took a look at our survey data, when our survey respondents said, what's happening now, what's happening in the next 3 years, many of them didn't think that we were going to be expecting a lot of job loss, precisely because there are new capabilities coming online. The companies that do this well are going to grow, and there's a lot of scope for using artificial intelligence to augment human capabilities. Now, what happens 5, 10, 15 years down the road depends on the development of those technologies and also the success that we have retraining workers, training new students to be able to take this and do more and better with it within an organization. We don't know how that's going to play out. There are certainly some reasons for hope there, but for the big industries where there's a lot of automation of rote tasks, certainly you are going to see some job losses, and I don't think we can hide from that. But what exactly that looks like, I don't think I'm prepared to say.
So maybe I have a different perspective on that, which is, I've been in this space, as an entrepreneur pursuing it for over half a decade, right? And I've been working with customers, building technology, working with that ecosystem of developers, building those cognitive engines. And let's just talk about the fact pattern that's happened in the last 5 years. And let's assume that same rate of change, let's not get hyperbolic about the Terminator moment, but literally what happened in the last 5 should probably be consistent in terms of growth pattern for the next 5. Beyond that, I think it gets fuzzy to your point. So here's what we saw. In 2014, we had one cognitive engine on our platform. It cost $3.24 to run that engine for 1 hour. It was 63% accurate in its function, and it took 3 times the length of actually the cognitive processing to actually generate an hour, which means we could process this conversation, go away, have lunch, and it would give us back some answers that was 63% accurate. That's valuable to no one, right? Yeah. Fast forward 5 years later, 150 plus engines on the platform, growing by 2 engines per week now across that ecosystem. Accuracy in that same category is tipping north of 80%. And most importantly, we've seen 100-fold decrease in cost. That beats Moore's law by 3 times. So I believe that same degree is going to push forward. We'll have tens of thousands of engines available to the marketplace. Cost base is going to be literally a single basis point above raw compute. And the integration of those services is going to actually allow us to solve harder problems versus point solutions. Right. Do you agree with that?
I agree with that.
I do. Yeah. And, every one of us is a highly intelligent computer, right? And so I think the among other things, a living being. But thinking just strictly...
I don't think of myself as a highly intelligent computer. My wife might, but...
Maybe it's just me. But anyway, if we think about our cognitive capabilities as human beings, we have a lot of it. And so there is a lot of scope to believe that there can be augmentation rather than replacement of a lot of what we do as these things get better.
So I'm going to harken back to Steve Jobs. Right. So when Steve Jobs was asked to define what he thinks about a computer is, and he said it's a tool for the mind. And I think let's think about that statement for a minute. A tool for the mind. Humans are tool builders, correct? We've built lots of tools, weapons, knives, etc. Name one tool that a human has built that has not surpassed that of creation. Right? We looked up and we watched animals flying. We said we'd like to fly. And today, do we have machines that can beat every creature that flies? We sat down and we said we wanted to build something that actually can do mathematics can we do it better than every human being on earth? Absolutely. So why in this one case do we believe that the tool that we've built for our mind would at some point in time not actually be better than its biological counterpart? Is this the one point, the only tool man will ever build that actually doesn't beat the biological counterpart? I think the answer is it won't.
I think that this is where the fear comes in, though, because many of those other tools that are better than their natural counterpart can be used for good and for ill. And I think that that's where a lot of the nervousness comes in.
So I recently just gave a talk on this, which is, the rate of human innovation. And we can talk about that going back to the first men. Essentially is, in my opinion, the rate of change of innovation is directly correlated to the total cerebral capacity of all human beings on Earth at that point in time, X, multiplied by the total innovations that you're now standing on top of building from. What's interesting about artificial intelligence, it's for the first time going to change the innovation curve. Right? So no longer is it just another tool where the human mind is simply still staying on that consistent trajectory. It's going to shift it forward. Yeah. I think the benefits from that greatly outweigh the potential risks. Specifically, cancer. We've been trying to attack that problem for a long time. Most scientists, when you talk to them, believe that the cure to cancer lies within the data that we have today. It's just impossible for human minds to sift through it all in an intelligent way.
And I want to go on data because if I think of day 1, I heard data when we talked about our podcast. Day 2, yesterday, I heard about data. And today, I'm hearing about data. There's clearly a common thread, whichever way we look at this, which is the importance of data, right? I want to ask the question is, who's going to own that data?
Well, it's very interesting. We're taking a look at some survey data that just came out for a study that will be launched in March. And consumers are starting to want to own more of their own data because they see a lot of the risks accruing to them, a lot of the benefits accruing to others. And I think that there's now a lot more desire on the part of individuals and the part of governments for there to be more equitable exchange about what's shared, what isn't, in what circumstances. I think that individual consumers or patients or what have you are willing to share if there's a benefit. But when it comes to this data and how it's extrapolated and the benefits that are accrued from it, we could end up having a very unequal distribution of wealth and so forth out of it. Or if we have a more holistic view of who that data belongs to, it could be very different.
Yeah, we see this all the time. When we first entered this market, we watched some of the larger ecosystem players starting to try to hoard their data, right? And they were starting to actually buy data sets in the public market that were extremely valuable and hoarding those and locking them away, where before they were publicly available for the rest of the community to start to build cognitive services on top of. You've seen companies like ours start to really lean into that as something which we believe is a detriment to not only society, but cognition in general. So our personal policy is, we encourage all of our partners that sign up with the platform to allow us working with them to derive what I'll call cognitive training data sets that we freely provide to all partners. So our objective is to allow the 3 kids in Kiev that are brilliant working on a next generation algorithm to equip them with that information and data as freely as possible so they can actually develop that innovation. And then more importantly, to allow them an ecosystem to publish it back into to start to monetize it and add value to the enterprise.
Right.
But if the objective is you believe you're going to hoard it all, lock it into a vault, hire your own data scientists and spit out end products, I believe at the end, that's a short-term win.
Right.
The long-term is collaboration and open data.
Yeah, I think collaboration and open data at that aggregate level or at that global level. But then when you get to personal data, I really do care what's happening with my data. So anonymized personal data, if that's a thing, in the global data set. But yeah, I don't want my information to be available everywhere. And I think you're right. I think people are getting more and more cognizant of that.
Thinking about data and something you mentioned earlier, Chad, about potential for cost cutting and how it can use for cost cutting. And of course, as we talked about earlier, CogTech, AI, the fear of, is my job going to go? Or immediately someone thinks about cost cutting. But I understand from your survey as well that there's so much more around the benefits of the products, the services, the performance that comes into play. Is that what you're also seeing at CES? Are the things coming more around performance, products, services, or is it more about things that are going to be cost cutting for the enterprise or the consumer?
Oh, I think here at CES, it's much more around embedding AI into products. And so how can you make what you offer to your customers better because it's smarter or more interesting or different from what the competition is doing? So what I've seen here, it's far more on the product side.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there's a tremendous opportunity to reimagine the value that you can deliver to a customer. What kind of experience can your consumer electronics give? What can it know about the customer that will then, maybe pick the right song or set the right mood or do the right thing, given what it already knows about the individual.
Yeah, and a lot of what we see here is sort of what makes things different in the home, right? So, but I think it's what I like to do is walk around the floor because I'm much more focused on enterprise, just like you, Chad, right? Is how can you take what I'm seeing here in this sort of home robot or whatever it is, and think about how would that make a company different? How could an enterprise use that technology to change what they do every day? Because the expectations of employees are going to be very different, right? So think about. All of us are of a certain age, right? So we didn't grow up having an expectation of technology embedded into everything we do. People do now, right? People expect things to happen in a different way. People expect to be able to talk to a device and something happens. And those things happen at home. We want them to happen at work now. People want them to happen at work.
So to that point, is it really consumer products that are driving the progress of AI and CogTech, or is it what's happening in the enterprise that's really driving it? Now, I know it's more front end and you can see it, touch it, feel it from a consumer side, but what's really, is it the enterprise or the consumer side that's really driving the advancements in CogTech and AI?
I think it's mixed. because you see things like, so I've been to if you go to like AI World.
I was there.
Yeah, both of us were there, Chad. There you see a lot more of the development of cognitive technologies to internal enterprise. How can an enterprise use data to make better decisions or automate processes in a different way, use data to get processes done better, more accurately? I don't think we're seeing it here, though, but I do think there is a lot of consumer that drives it as well. So I think it's mixed.
So I would probably answer it a little bit differently. I think it originates kind of at the enterprise. I think because that's where it's easier to innovate. You have the horsepower, you have the computing. You don't have to miniaturize the chips and try to figure out how you're going to squeeze a cognitive engine into a watch.
Right.
And so the innovation, I think, is still happening from true cognitive science at the cloud level, at the enterprise. And I think what's happening is as those engines start percolating there, you're watching very nimble companies, and sometimes even companies that sit on both sides, that have both consumer products and enterprise products, can start to mesh those two different objectives together.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. So it's the innovation of the technologies themselves, I think, does happen at the enterprise. And here at CES, we see lots of examples of companies who are like, oh, how can I use that in my product?
Facial recognition, or I want to run an anomaly engine against, I think from CES, when I walked around just briefly, I'm most excited about personal healthcare.
Yeah.
The devices, we came from a generation where if you wanted to find your blood pressure or whatever it might be, you're going to the doctor, let alone even blood analysis. There's devices now that are actually looking through your skin and can actually identify using artificial intelligence up to a dozen different ailments that you could be suffering from on blood-borne pathogens that are non-invasive. Bringing that tool into the home cost effectively is going to change medicine.
But I think it ends up changing opinions about what it can do and getting excitement around what it can do at the individual or consumer level that ends up giving a whole new push to what happens in the enterprise. So if you are using a home assistant to play music and shop and to have instant search and interactions, that builds a level of expectation to how you're going to interact with the enterprise. If you are able to use home health care that's instantly connected, your immediate next step is to think, well, why can't I connect with all companies that way? Why can't I connect with government agencies that way? And there ends up being a real push to accelerate it from the customer's point of view that has ramifications at the enterprise.
So we talked a little bit here about AI, cog tech, in terms of what it could really be like for, one, the enterprise driving consumer products also folding back into enterprise. It will be remiss of me if I didn't use the term AI and talk about the future. So just fast forward me 3 years. What is my world going to look like? What are we all going to be experiencing in the workplace and in the home through cog tech and AI?
Well, I think in 3 years, I think we'll see greater use and acceptance of cognitive engagement. So, like the avatars or the humanoid robots, for example. I think that we will see better application of the data that can be collected from the all the things that we're wearing on our wrists. And I think at work, we will probably see, I think that the automation of processes at work will really take hold. And so I think we really will see a lot less kind of rote tasks and a lot more thinking. So if you're a customer service agent, you will focus on solving complex problems rather than telling someone that the balance of their bill is $42.90.
Right. From my perspective, I think it's going to be about augmented intelligence across the board. I think that whether you're an employee at a corporation or you're a person at home, I think your environment is going to have augmented intelligence embedded into almost every device, both in terms of the interface, how you engage with it in natural language, to actually, when it's surfacing up information that you should be spending your time at work, whether as an executive or as customer support across the entire enterprise. I think it's a lot of people focus on the mundane task that's going to be eliminated. I think that's one aspect. What's odd about our company, almost none of our customers today are using our cognitive services to remove the mundaneness of their jobs. Instead, they're actually using it to actually solve problems that they are incapable of solving because the breadth of the information they have to process. And that's what I'm excited about, is the superhuman capabilities of what AI is going to enable everyone to have.
Yeah, and from my perspective, in the enterprise, I think you're going to move from a bespoke model where everything has to be fairly tailored. You've got to end up, collecting your data sets and training your data sets, and it takes a lot of experience, to more of an off the rack. So, your organization still has to be involved with the vendors and so forth, but it's going to be easier to do, more plug and play, and that's going to lead to greater value. I think from a consumer side, you're going to see more home assistants. You're going to see more people getting comfortable asking a device for advice, asking a device to help, to organize things. And so that's going to come, I think, in both areas, therefore, it's just going to be more of a seamless part of life.
Brilliant. That's great. So that's it for day 3 of our final series of the podcast at CES. So with that, Mick, Jeff, Chad, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
That's it for User Friendly's 3-episode special from CES. We're so excited to be bringing you insights directly from the show. You want more from User Friendly? We'll be back with our usual programming in mid-February. Season 2 will cover everything from the future of home entertainment to flexible consumption strategies to the latest trends in mobile. We'll have some exciting new guests and new episode segments to keep your business ahead of the latest trends in tech, media, and telecom. See you in February.